For the past 6 months, I've unintentionally been running an experiment with my gravel adventure bike. If you're new here, my gravel bike is a Surly Karate Monkey mountain bike that has a rigid fork, fast rolling tires, and funny looking handlebars, and it does a great job on dirt and gravel roads here in Montana. When I first set it up for gravel riding, I left the 2.4-inch mountain bike tires on, and while those were great in the tricky winter conditions, to say they weren't the fastest tire would be an understatement. I ended up ordering some 50mm or 2-inch wide Maxxis Rambler gravel tires, but due to the craziness of 2020, it was going to be a while before I got them. That's when I found some of the same tire in a narrower 40mm width in my parts bin that I had just forgotten about. I used those for a bit until the wider version finally arrived. Since then, I've swapped back and forth between the two widths of Rambler and ridden 250 miles of pavement, maintained gravel roads, and even some single track. So what's the accidental experiment I was referring to? It's pretty simple. Given the same tread pattern, is a wider or narrower tire better for gravel riding? Let's start off with some background real quick. Gravel bikes evolved out of cyclocross bikes, which are essentially road bikes with clearance for knobby tires in the 30 to 35mm wide range. So in the early days of gravel, even a 40mm wide tire was considered huge. Take a look at the first version of the Salsa Warbird, which is arguably the first bike made specifically for gravel riding. The first generation came with 35mm wide tires with generous, as they called it, clearance for 38mm tires. Jump to the 2021 model, and it comes stocked with 42mm tires with clearance for up to a 45mm wide tire. You can also look to major gravel races like Unbound Gravel, a 200-mile race through the gravel roads of Kansas, and you'll find that most riders are on tires in the 40 to 45mm range. Clearly, that generous 38mm of clearance from nearly 10 years ago wasn't enough. But is 40mm enough, or should gravel go even bigger, and should 50 be the new norm? So back to my bike and tire setup. I've had the interesting experience of running both sizes set up tubeless, and due to issues with my non-tubeless wheels being finicky, I've also been using tubes for the past 4 or 5 weeks. When your tires are set up tubeless, you can run slightly lower tire pressures because you don't have to worry about pinch flatting. Pinch flatting is when you run over something so hard that the rim and whatever you hit come together hard enough to cut the tube. And while it might seem counterintuitive to want to run lower tire pressures for the sake of efficiency, plenty of testing and real-world experience has told us that lower is actually better. I've been using my 40mm tires at 42 to 43 psi with tubes and 39 to 40 while tubeless. The 50mm tires have a much larger volume, so I can run significantly lower pressure in those. I found right around 35 psi to be perfect with tubes and 32 to 33 psi without. So what have I found in all of these miles? First of all, a gravel-specific tire has a much faster rolling tread pattern, and either size rolls faster and with less effort than the mountain bike tires that were on there before. The Maxxis Rambler also does a great job of balancing efficiency with traction, so while it doesn't have too much rolling resistance, it still has plenty of grip for rough terrain. I found that the 40mm tire is especially fast on well-packed dirt and gravel and is an easy pedal on pavement. Near where I live, there's a section of road that's about 3.5 miles and climbs 1,100 feet or 335 meters. I've ridden this dozens of times over the last 5 years, and while it does have some sections that are rocky and rough, the majority of it is well-packed dirt. A few weeks ago, while using the 40mm tires, I was able to post my fastest time since 2016 on this section without even really pushing it. I didn't think I was going very fast based on the effort I was putting in, but this tire size is efficient enough that it just doesn't take as much effort in general. The 50mm tires, while still fast rolling for their size, are noticeably slower on hardpack and pavement when compared to the 40s. I wouldn't say they're sluggish or difficult to keep moving, they just aren't as quick to accelerate and require more sustained effort. Where the 50s really shine though is when things get loose or bumpy. While this seems like an obvious observation, what is surprising is how quickly this advantage comes into play. A wider tire will obviously do better in deep sand beds or through really chunky rock gardens. But in my experience, the 50mm tires have been faster in almost every situation besides hardpack and pavement. Part of this is because the tire has a bigger contact patch and floats on top of the rougher surface. But beyond that, the lower tire pressures make for a less jarring ride, which is especially nice when you don't have any suspension. This means when you hit an extra rough patch of road, you don't have to battle with the handlebars going all over or slow down to keep your wrist from breaking. The ride on wider tires is more comfortable and more controlled in rough or technical situations, which makes it a little bit faster. Another thing to note is that even though I've taken the bike on much rougher terrain with the 50mm tires on, I actually knocked a wheel slightly out of true on the 40mm tires. The higher pressure required for narrower tires seems to put more stress on the wheels even in situations that aren't particularly crazy or rocky. Every experiment, accidental or not, has to have a conclusion, so here's mine on the debate of tire width. In riding situations that are primarily hardpack, pavement, or even thin layers of smaller sized gravel, a 40mm tire is easily the most efficient tire between the two. It accelerates quickly, is wide enough to handle some rough sections without too much trouble, and will help you go farther faster with less effort. On everything else, the wider 50mm tire is more efficient, fun, and much easier on things like your wrists and arms. It might not be as fast all of the time, but the added traction, control, and comfort is well worth it. If you want to be able to explore any side road or double track trail you come across, 50mm is a great width for the job. It rolls plenty fast on pavement and hardpack, but can still handle the roughest roads out there. So I've never ridden a 45mm wide tire, but if you ride a lot of pavement and hardpack and still want to explore fairly rough gravel and ride the occasional trail, it looks like a great middle ground size. I've considered buying some, but for now I like to explore rough terrain more than I care about going fast on hardpack, so I'm sticking with the 50s. While tire clearances on gravel bikes have been increasing the last few years, I do think that they've reached their limit. Once you go over 50mm, you're pretty much in mountain bike territory, and that's probably what you'd want to be riding at that point anyway. Don't get me wrong, I love big tires, and bikes like the Kona Sutra ULTD and the Bomb Track Hook are really cool. It's part of the reason I went with the mountain bike frame for my build. But to echo the opinion of some viewers of this channel, that's not a gravel bike. So what's your experience with gravel tires been? Would you rather be as fast as possible on the smooth stuff or be able to go down any road you'd like? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications if you enjoyed this and want to see more. I'll see you next time.